And now the right wing is not free market. Now they're, Trump is making it like unions and attacking free trade. Like I think we live in a crazy time. Things are nuts.
Yeah, well, obviously, like fascists and communists are very similar, so they do converge. But that's just state power. It's not, I never bought into this left-right nonsense. I mean, I really did. I never. You don't even see me. I don't even use left and right in my writing. Like because I don't find it very useful. I'm against state power. So you know, abusive state power is what I'm against.
Right.
So that's it. So I'm for allowing the little guy to do what he needs to do. With minimal interference. And it's not like even libertarian attitude here. It's just like in Vietnam, for example. Um, there's one party system. So that's still abusive, but it's gotten a lot less abusive in recent years because they realized they could not function the way they were going, with the constant harassment of the ordinary people. But on a day-to-day basis, you can get away with a lot of things here that you cannot do in the United States. You can open a store tomorrow. Basically, at a park near me, okay, a woman decided to just open a soup, a pho place, and so she just set up some tables in the park itself, okay, a couple tables. I mean, you can't do that in the United States. You can't just put tables in the park and so far, So she lived across the street from the park. So, you sit in the park at two tables and you order, and she runs, over and she brings you your but that's typical Vietnamese way of doing things. They just do whatever they feel like, and the government pretty much just leaves them alone, So, because at the same park, there's a police station, just across the way. They don't bother her. And the neighbors don't care, you know what I'm saying? Because she's not really hurting anybody. She's claiming a little bit of the real estate from the park itself, but who cares? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that kind of freedom in Vietnam, you can do anything you want. There's a guy, about 50 yards from where I'm sitting right now. He set up shoes in the morning on the sidewalk. He just sell old shoes. He doesn't have any license. He's claiming the sidewalk. No one cares. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I mean by leave the little guy alone. Allow him to make a living, because if you harass him too much, tell him what to do, then he can't function and he become a criminal. So I've always been against abusive state power, and I've always tried to defend the little guy, whether in the United States or Vietnam or wherever. Leave people alone, okay? And I don't believe that there's one system for the whole, for the entire earth. That doesn't make any sense. So communism is out. That doesn't make any sense. Neoliberalism is out. To allow each community to decide how it wants to live. And I think this mania, this almost evangelical mania that there is in the West about, there's one way to do things, and that kind of intolerance is showing up in the United States right now, because like the Antifa people, if you don't agree with them, you instantly a Nazi. You just brand a Nazi right away, and it doesn't make any sense. So that word is being used very loosely right now, and I'm being called a Nazi too. And that a Nazi is someone who supports a lot of state control, and I'm anything but that. But they don't see that far. They don't just because I'm critical of Jewish power, I'm a Nazi. And here's another thing too, racial differences. Okay, and I get in trouble for pointing out black crime and black dysfunction, and that doesn't make me a racist. I just notice the differences. Okay, Vietnamese are not Cambodians, are not Chinese, are not Japanese, are not black people. Okay, we're all different. Okay, and a lot of it is genetic. Okay, and you can't say that, and I don't see why not. Right? I mean, I'm not trying to deny there's not an environmental factor in who you are. But there's always a genetic factor too. I mean, I'm not LeBron James, okay? I'm not 6'8", okay? There's a genetic factor there, okay? It's not because of how I was raised. It's because, I was born Vietnamese, with my father's genes and with my mother's genes, you see? So, but that's a taboo subject right now. Every child is supposed to be a blank slate and with equal potentials, which is inherently absurd, okay? I mean, you know, I used to love to play basketball. That, it sounds like a joke, okay? But when I was in high school, I just loved to play basketball. But it doesn't matter how many hours I put, into practicing. I'm not going to be a good basketball player just because of my physique, okay? So, that's genetics, okay? So I'm made for other things, but you can't notice racial differences, genetics differences without being branded a racist, and that's just inherently stupid. But anyway, I think people will come around to recognizing some of these wrong-headed dogmatism that are being defended so vehemently right now.
Yeah, I've heard that part of the reason it's so intense right now. I mean, obviously, America, we've been incredibly diverse, and so there's bound to be tension. So that's part of it. But I've heard that part of the reason it's getting so intense now is because we're getting closer and closer to this old paradigm just dying and just collapsing because of the internet, because of technology. I mean, soon, the minute that Black people are allowed to make their eyes genetically blue, I think all this is going to go out the window. I mean, you look at Brazil, you look at South America, or even Vietnam. I mean, part of this isn't. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure part of it is colonialism and society and blah blah blah. But a big part of it all over the world is because the people who worked outside were darker. So even ancient Egypt, they wanted to have pale skin. So in Vietnam, I mean, you see that people are covering up, like more than Muslims. And so I think the moment that people are going to be able to change this stuff, then people are going to be out in the open talking about, what, I wish I had an Asian IQ. I'm going to take a pill and and then we're just going to talk about it out in the open. But right now, I think people are just like, no, there's no differences. Yeah, but, he's born with a penis. No. They're just going to the levels of absurdity, and I think it's because it's about to die out. But on the other hand, so I agree with you 100%. I think we're on the same page as far as race being.
Michael, what's going to die out? Racial people can tailor themselves to whatever.
When I say die out, I mean this insane taboo about it. I think people will be more open to talk about it when it's within our grasp to change. But I think now it's unfair, and we're all traumatized because of Hitler and World War II. So the moment you start talking about, maybe some genes should be good for this, or every race has pros and cons. Asians have high IQs, blacks are have those quick reflexes for good at boxing, and yada yada yada. That stuff, I think a lot of people can talk about it, but a lot of people are in that old paradigm and they're afraid to talk about it. So that's what I'm just the mindset will die out, not people specifically.
But Michael, here's the funny thing, man. On a philosophical level, I mean, you have to come to terms with who you are, with your limitations. I have to come to terms with my limitations. My various defects. Okay, I mean that's the primary lesson of life. You realize your limitations. Okay, and which become even more numerous the older you get and the things fall apart and whatever. The more you know yourself, the more stupid you realize you are. Okay, so the fact that we are so resistant towards recognizing our limitations is a kind of childishness. It's a kind of it's a kind of retardation. We can't use the word retard now. So yeah. So it's a kind of immaturity. So that has to be outgrown. You cannot pretend that you can be anything. That is pure fantasy. That is pure childishness. That is pure idiocy. Okay, but that's where we are in American culture right now. It's about that you can just say it. You can say I'm a woman or whatever. I'm smart and I'm a genius, whatever. And here's another damaging effect of this is that people who succeed, people who do well, almost they not just resent it, but they almost seen as having unfair advantages. You know what I'm saying? So if you are a failure, then because you've been oppressed, because you've been screwed over. So if you succeed, that must be because you had undeserving advantages. All right. So there's almost a hatred of success, of successful people, of smart people, of anything. Unless your success is dependent purely on physical gifts, then somehow that's okay. Right.
Well, because we know who it benefits, so and that's okay. As long as white people aren't doing okay, then yeah, I guess that's natural. You're born that way, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you said that, because that's actually something I was pondering recently. It's become kind of trendy now. You see on Instagram and stuff all these white girls doing yoga and people trying to meditate and stuff. But I have been trying it, and I've been trying it for a while. My uncle, who actually fought in Vietnam, he recommended The Power of Now, which I know is kind of a basic bitch entry into meditation, but I like it. I started to listen to a little bit, and he said something.
Carl Jung tells in one of his books of a conversation he had with a Native American chief, who pointed out to him that in his perception, most white people have tense faces, staring eyes, and a cruel demeanor. He said, "They are always seeking something. What are they seeking? The whites always want something. They are always uneasy and restless. We don't know what they want. We think they are mad." The undercurrent of constant unease started long before the rise of Western industrial civilization, of course. But in Western civilization, which now covers almost the entire globe, including most of the East, it manifests in an unprecedentedly acute form. It was already there at the time of Jesus, and it was there 600 years before that at the time of Buddha, and long before that. "Why are you always anxious?" Jesus asked his disciples. "Can anxious thought add a single day to your life?" And the Buddha taught that the root of suffering is to be found in our constant wanting and craving. Resistance to the now as a collective dysfunction is intrinsically connected to loss of awareness of being and forms the basis of our dehumanized industrial civilization.
And this is what I wanted to ask you, is that I wonder how much of meditation is, maybe it's futile for white people because the Faustian spirit or whatever, there's that desire to explore, to go and get more and more and more, that maybe is part of why we explored and colonized and did certain good things, and well not for better or for worse, explored, but at the same time maybe that's why we're always kind of discontent. And like Sam Harris talks about meditation, and he said the East, they were exploring and on the forefront of inner peace and inner exploration of the mind and inner philosophies. And I'm wondering how much of that is innate. And I know it's hard to study this stuff. Psychology is such a new science, but maybe I'm just it's pointless. Maybe I should just focus on stoicism and do meditation just to like same like with you in basketball. You enjoy it. Of course, meditation can help me. Basketball can help you. It's good. But at a certain level, maybe I'm a white guy who just can never reach Buddha levels inner peace, and
you have as much of a chance as me of playing in the NBA, maybe. Well, let's give it a try. It's not too late.
So and one other example though, that I'm very excited to ask you about. I was talking about the same thing because I think the alt-right, they're smart to admit, okay, race is real, race matters, genetics, but they go balls to the walls, pendulum swing, and they say, okay, 100 or 90% or more is all genetic and it doesn't matter. And that's almost as much of a defeatist and narrow-minded attitude as the victim, black people who say, oh, everything's because the white man's keeping me down. Same thing, it's all genetic and it's all IQ. I think that's limited. Clearly, it's a debate. Maybe it's 70% genetic, maybe it's 50, who knows, right? So one of the things I was talking about with my girlfriend's brother, he was talking about a TED Talk, and it was a Vietnamese guy who was talking about the subjunctive, which I didn't know what that was. He had to tell me, but it means basically woulda, coulda, shoulda. Like you look back and you go, man, if I would have just, studied harder, I would have got a better grade in the test, or if I would have taken this bus, I would have blah, blah, blah.
And this all starts with our understanding of the subjunctive. I remember talking to my dad about this, and because he's a non-native speaker of English, he didn't quite grasp all the nuances of the subjunctive. I'd say, Dad, listen, you can say, if it hadn't rained, we would have gone to the beach. And my dad's response, that's stupid. Why do you want to talk about something that didn't happen? Fair enough. Here's a quick refresher for you on the subjunctive. In English, there are three verbal moods. There's the indicative, the subjunctive, and the imperative. The indicative is used when we view verbal action as factual. I'm speaking at a TED conference. The subjunctive is used when we view verbal action as non-factual. I might shit my pants. might. And the imperative mood is used when we view verbal action as a command. Bring me a change of clothes. The subjunctive comprises all the nuances of non-fact, possibility, potentiality, and contrafactuality. The subjunctive allows us to look into the future and to see multiple highly nuanced possibilities with just a little sprinkling of coulds, woulds, or mights. Similarly, it allows us to look into the past and to imagine what didn't happen but could have happened. The subjunctive is the most powerful mood. It's like a time-space dream machine that can conjure alternate realities with just the idea of could have or should have. But within this idea of should have is a Pandora's box of hope and regret. Growing up in Pennsylvania as a Vietnamese refugee, I often thought about what would have happened if my family hadn't escaped Saigon in 1975. Would we have been imprisoned like my father's cousin who spent years in re-education camp being tortured and sentenced to hard labor? Or would we have simply been killed like countless other South Vietnamese who were unable to escape that April? The night that my family was fleeing Saigon, my entire family, parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, we were all scheduled to board a bus. And as that bus was loading passengers, I began crying, shrieking uncontrollably, so much so that my entire family decided to wait for the next bus. And as that bus pulled away from us, it was struck by artillery fire, it exploded, and everyone on board was killed. As a kid, I thought a lot about our good fortune in escaping and about what would have happened if we hadn't. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was pondering things that my parents couldn't ponder, and it was all because of the English subjunctive. What happens then if a language doesn't have a subjunctive and can't express the idea of could have? And what if that language were Vietnamese? For my father, there were no alternate realities in 1975. There was just what happened and what didn't happen. Even if he did feel the pangs of losing a life that he should have had, he didn't have the language to express it. In Vietnam, my father was a lawyer and an aspiring politician. He should have had a career. He should have been somebody important. Yet there he was in 1975 in a country he didn't know, driving a cement mixer, trying to learn English and support his family. Not only did my father not have the language to envision an alternate reality, he didn't have the luxury. For my parents' survival, however, this lack of the subjunctive was fundamental to their resiliency. They were able to provide for me and my brother to do what needed to be done, in part because they didn't expend psychic energy on what could have been. In Vietnamese, there was just the naked indicativeness of the world, and they met it head on. But just as the indicativeness of Vietnamese has been a source of strength for them, it's also been an Achilles heel, because they've had such difficulty grasping concepts based in possibility. 2 years ago, when my daughter was born, I decided to take a half-year's leave of absence from teaching. And when I shared this plan with my dad, he immediately panicked, because what he heard in Vietnamese was, "Dad, I won't be teaching next year." His response was, "What? You quit your job? Are you crazy? Who quits their job in this economy?" Even though I assured my dad that it was just a leave of absence, he was unable to comprehend what was for him the sheer uncertainty of not having a job. What he knew were just the facts, that I had had a job and that I was not going to have a job. Imagine then going from a language with no subjunctive, like Vietnamese, to a language with a subjunctive-rich fabric, like English. What happens when someone goes from the one to the other? The problem was, I didn't know what should have happened. I didn't look like any of my friends, and my family, full of brown immigrants and exotic smells, didn't look like my friends' families. And as a result, I didn't know what should have happened and what my future should have looked like as I spun my wheels in the quagmire of the subjunctive, wishing that I were someone else or somewhere else. What I did know was that when I graduated from high school, I wanted to double major in art and English. So I went off to college, and I showed my art professor my portfolio, and I got a waiver for the 101 class. And because of my AP English class in high school, I got to sign up for a 200-level literature elective, and I was ready to read great books and think great thoughts. Then the unexpected happened. I hated my English and art classes. By the end of that semester, I had dropped both majors and I was undeclared. I was utterly depressed and deflated because I hated what I thought I should have loved. Dejected, I sat down with my dad that December to tell him that I didn't want to major in art and English anymore, as I awaited some reprimand from him. But my father was completely calm, without a hint of disappointment. There was no "you should" speech from him, because that would have required a command of the subjunctive, which he lacks. Instead, this is what he said. You don't want to major in art and English anymore? That's fine. Don't study what you don't like. What do you like? Study that. It was it. His answer was so simple. It was like pure, unfiltered reality delivered with the indicative. And so that's what I did. I went back to school, to college, and that spring I signed up on a whim for ancient Greek. And it was brutally hard. And I loved every minute of it. I loved every clause, every accent, every participle. And so that next year, I signed up for more Greek, and on a whim, Sanskrit. And that was even harder, and I loved it even more. And by my junior year, I was taking Latin, Greek, and Sanskrit, and on a whim, German immersion. I wasn't restrained by ideas of what I was supposed to study or should have been studying. I simply pursued what I honestly loved, embracing the reality, the indicativeness of my passions. The subjunctive really did allow me to imagine what I could be. It allowed me to be so creative and to entertain crazy visions of what if. But even as I unpacked all those possibilities, I fell prey to the dark side of the subjunctive, the idea of should have. Should have didn't improve my present or my future. Should have simply blinded me to what was because I was so fixated on what wasn't. So much of my depression as a teenager, which verged on suicidal at times, came from how badly I wanted to be anyone else besides myself. Accepting things for what they are, accepting their indicativeness, was my first step towards overcoming my depression and anxiety. More important, it was my first step towards honoring and loving who I was and pulling away from the dark side of the subjunctive.
And so there's a certain element, they've done a lot of studies about this, about language clearly affects your psychology. Another example is they've done a study where basically German, for example, bridge is male in German and it's female in Spanish. Sure enough, the German speakers would describe, they'd say, describe this bridge, this picture. Sure enough, Germans would describe it as like sturdy and masculine, adjectives. And then the French, let's say it's feminine, they'd say, oh, it's, curvaceous and blah, blah, blah. So clearly it affects the way you perceive the world. There is an element of, nurture. It's not 100% nature. So as a poet, as someone who's translated, who's lived in multiple countries, what is your take on this? I mean, how does that, do you have trouble relating? Or do you feel like you have they say having a second language is like having another soul. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, it's, language is everything, but but then you realize it's also a very, it's an elaborate artifice, I mean, there's nothing inevitable about anything in language, so for me that became fairly clear early on because I had to learn a new language, and I realized my native language, Vietnamese or English, was just a system. Okay, so. And then, being in other places and try, I tried to learn Italian when I was in Italy. It didn't do very well. I gave try to pick up some German because I had to be in Germany for 5. But anyway, I've been exposed to different languages. So I realized that, these are systems. So, and, the Vietnamese language has many quirks, has many peculiarities that, that an outsider just would not even notice. I mean, not just not notice, but what I mean, but even Vietnamese don't even notice. Okay, So for example, like the term for husband in Vietnamese is also the verb for being on top. Now that's not very PC, is it? Chong is husband, but to chong is to place something on top. You're not going to get away with that in contemporary America, right? So, but that's how the Vietnamese think. So. There's a lot. The Vietnamese don't say country, my country. They say my water.
Water.
So, yeah, You know, I love my water. I would fight for my water. You know, so that's a lot of oddities. I mean, I can go on.
That's I'm curious. Is it an analogy? What is that like? What does that mean? Water?
They don't
Is it
even think
because
about it. They don't you know they don't even think it's weird. They you know I'm sure many Vietnamese probably assume everybody else refers to their country as water too. You know what I'm saying? If they don't know another language.
That's crazy. I wonder what that. There's got to be some. I love to look up the etymology, but even English and Italian or whatever, they don't know. It's all just people speculating. They say, oh, I think this word came from this, but we're not really sure that.
But maybe they realize how water is so essential, right? I mean, more essential than land. I don't know. I mean, that doesn't But also the rice paddies it's a lot of water, right? So like a Vietnamese feel, the rice paddies is water. So, but I'm only guessing here. But that's
right.
Yeah.
Huh. So just a little extension on that. I saw that you had said that sometimes people mistake you for Chinese or Korean, and even though your accent is like native speaker accent, people there still kind of, they can tell you're not from around there, and I get that as well. And I don't know if it's mannerisms or some sort of subconscious energy, or I don't know what it is, but I also get that when I go back to the States, and I also feel kind of out of place. So yeah, has that affected you living in? I mean, do you feel at home in Vietnam, or where do you feel more at home? I mean, you travel everywhere, so it seems like in odd places, you're on buses and stuff. So I could probably buy you a bus ticket and drop you blindfolded, and you'd probably be fine. But where do you feel at home?
I'm fine either here or in the United States. I really am. I mean, I'm not completely at home in either place, but I'm fine. But I think that's because I wasn't raised. I mean, because I live in different places, so my body language. Even my body is different than the people here, because the other places I've lived in has shaped me, shaped my mannerism, and shaped my physique, shaped my face, whatever, So I'm fine with that. It used to bother me that that I wasn't completely at home anywhere, but I realized, hey, I'm actually quite blessed that that I've had the privilege of being in all these different places. So if sometimes I get a little bit of a prejudice, let's say, it's a tax that I pay. It's not. Look, sometimes it can be very uncomfortable. I'm talking about in the United States. Sometimes you get some nastiness, but generally speaking, it wasn't. When I was a young man, it used to annoy me. It used to disturb me a lot more. But I would say that the bulk of my time in the United States, I was fine because I mean, people are people. If you go out there, you mix with people, you're gonna get some unpleasant experiences. But the bulk of it was positive. People are friendly, they good nature, they try to be accommodating. They try to get to know you. They share a lot. I mean, my last book, Postcards from Native America, I travel across the country to the most unlikely places. And almost nothing negative happened. All right. I mean, the odds of that is actually quite remarkable because you think, I'm always going to strange towns. I'm always going to strange bars. When you hang out with a bunch of drunks, for hours, some of them might get a little crazy. But the fact that almost nothing bad happened shows that people are generally pretty good. Or maybe I'm just very lucky.
Right on. Well, actually, let me take this break. So I part of the podcast, I'm trying to make it more, I don't know, music related and kind of artsy fartsy. So can I ask you, do you have any songs that you could just name songs that you like, or songs that maybe you relate to that you feel like other people whose eyes are open, who are woke to all these things, feel isolated or red pilled, or however you want to name it? Is there anything that comes to mind?
You mean songs?
Yeah, just songs you like.
Oh man, I haven't. I'm fairly productive as far as writing and getting things done, and it's mostly because I've shut out media from my life. I mean, I stopped buying any kind of recorded music decades ago. I just made a decision: no more cassettes, no more. I mean, I'm talking even the fact I even mentioned cassette. That's how long ago it was. Like no CDs, no. I stopped listening to music pretty much. I mean, I still get my music because when you're out, you hear. Because in a bar or in a restaurant or on the streets, but I just stopped listening to music, and I pretty much stopped watching television also. Although I when I was in Philly, I would watch a little bit of sports. So it's very, I can't really talk about music, pop music, okay? But well, maybe I can. How about if I mention some films? So 'cause that's your thing, right?
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm anything goes, man.
Yeah. Well, in the 80s, when I was still in college and right after college, I did watch. I go to the theater, and watch films, and I remember being very impressed by Cassavetes because of his drawn out dialogues. People would just talk and talk and talk and talk, and I guess they were actually improvising, and the efforts that they exerted to entertain each other. I mean, these are actors, but they're also people, seemingly in real time trying to please each other, trying to, that taught me a lot. So maybe that, for a lot of my writing, I have quite a bit of patience to hear people go on and on about themselves, which I find fascinating. And I'm not saying it came from Cassavetes, but I realize that people are always trying to write. They're already writer because they already they're always composing with language, okay? And they're writing for you. They're trying to please you. They're trying to entertain you. They're trying to inform you. They're trying to humor you. So I got a little bit of that from Cassavetes. And I remember being very impressed also by Fellini because of how carnivalesque some of his many of his scenarios were, and that kind of expansiveness in Fellini was very impressive to me. And being in Vietnam, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, Vietnam is kind of a Fellini film, or a very late Fellini film. I mean, things just happen all over the place, and things just blur into each other. So so I watch a little bit of films, and Hozak, but and then I stopped watching films. so much for that.
No, I feel you, and I think, I mean, for you, it's probably just because you're always on the road and you're very productive and busy. But I think for a lot of people, it's because it's propaganda, and I mean, there's a million Holocaust movies, and it's just the same thing over and over and over. So all you can do is watch news, and so for me, that's part of why I'm trying to get into this, or give outlets for people to just say, okay, take a minute, relax, listen to this song, watch this movie. Someone else who has similar worldview. Again, I don't want to left or right. I don't give a shit about that. But people who are woke or red pilled, however you want to say it, they can relate and they like this. So just to give, just so people don't kill themselves. I mean, this is just to be honest. I mean, you get wise to all this stuff, and it's depressing, man. It's depressing. On that note, that I guess kind of your, I don't want to say disdain, but your apprehension with technology. It reminds me, probably my favorite poem that I've heard you read is, I think it's called, I wrote it down. To me, it seems like the meaning is the absurdity of modernity. I don't know, that sounds kind of silly, but it's new products, I think. I'm trying to find it in the notes. Yeah, I love that one. And if you don't mind, I'll sample it. I think that's a really good one.
A vigilant gun that always picks out the right target, even if it's you, no matter who you're aiming at. A computer that listens and blows you as you blow it to your favorite tune. Meat that cleans your teeth as you masticate it. A truck so awesome only the President of the United States of America's allow to careen in it to his own beat. A dictionary with positive adjectives only. A dictionary with no wet verbs. A dictionary with negotiable definitions. A dictionary that defines words by the antonyms. All the greatest hits from the last millennium, performed live on stage on the inside of your state-of-the-art acoustically enhanced skull. A complete set of nude photos of you taken by you and sold back to you at a discount. A sex doll with a mirror for a face. A sex doll with a PhD. A sex doll with adjustable skin tone. A sensitive sex doll that just wants to be friends. A platonic sex doll. Rainwater in a bottle, sunshine in a box, and ambient sounds from a bus stop down the street recorded on a CD. A 24-hour video of what you did yesterday. A 24-hour video of what you do tomorrow. A super realistic photo of what's outside your window pasted to your window. A baseball game that never ends, to be played simultaneously with a football game that never ends. Cluster bombs that scatter copies of leaves of grass over 1,000-mile radius for 1,000 years. Landmines made with dough, topped with mozzarella and all your favorite toppings. An airplane that never lands. And finally, your favorite fairy tale painted on your new plastic limbs.
And I guess for other people, I did some research. I found some really good Vietnamese hip-hop artists. And I know you'd said, and I agree with you, mainstream hip-hop is actually very destructive, and it's leading a degradation or degenerate force in American culture and around the world. I mean, honestly, I left Vietnam and I came back and I saw Tinder. A lot of the culture has changed because of American media and technology, and it was actually kind of depressing to see that kind of globalism changing the culture there. That, you know, girls started to get stuck up, and it was just this. Yeah, it looked like any other city, you know, Bui Vien. And I'm not a big party guy, but going there, it felt like, okay, this is just like any other city around the world. It's a bunch of, you know, drugs and whatever. So that kind of sucks. But the artists I'm going to play now, they're influenced again by that Japanese DJ who does. He mixed old school Japanese instruments with, you know, hip hop, and it's this kind of new genre that's been around the world, and Vietnamese have done it. And it's kind of, I don't know. I have no idea what they're saying, so sorry if they're like, you know, I love Jews, they're my favorite. No, I know you don't. I mean, you work. I mean, Uns is Jewish and stuff, so, you know, jokes aside, I know you're not.
Là mình đã bị ám ảnh bởi cái chết này, rồi ám ảnh lớn nhất cuộc đời mình. Và mỗi người chỉ sống một đời thôi, nhưng mà tình yêu sẽ tiếp tục mãi mãi ở trên mặt đất này. Ngoài tình yêu ra mình chỉ nghĩ đến cái mất cái con, bởi vì mất con của thân xác con người cũng như mất con một cuộc tình giống nhau.
Mày lấy đi, lấy hết đi, tao cũng chẳng ăn. Đồng tiền nó lấy của tao, đôi thằng anh em vài thằng bạn. Giấc mơ nó lấy của tao cái thực tại. Thả tao rơi và đưa tao về bờ vực lại. Rồi những cú ngã lấy của tao cái nỗi đau, cái mệt mỏi. Lấy luôn cả cơn nỗi cao dòng suy nghĩ. Lấy của tao sự bình yên trong đầu ta thì vẫn luôn là trình chiến mà khổ nỗi. Ta đã phải là thằng cầm bình quyền, những suy nghĩ thái quá. Lấy đi sự hài hòa, suy nghĩ đến rồi đi thôi. Suy nghĩ chẳng của ai cả, vậy mà những đêm trắng nằm nghỉ cố lại lấy của ta và kilo sự thất vọng. Lấy của ta niềm khao khát cái chi tiết, lấy của ta sự bao quát. Về cái thực tại còn mà như mất, bọc cảm xúc lại che mắt. Lấy cái xúc thật, lấy của mang cái chiều sâu. Lấy của ta cái bề mặt, cái người này thật sự là cái người kia đéo để mắt.
Phần lớn là tình yêu, nhưng mà trong tình yêu vẫn có một phần của thân phận là kết nghĩa. Và có những cái bài tuyệt đối là toàn bộ là thân phận.
Mày nặng lời, chỉ vì nghĩ là lấy của tao được cái danh dự. Còn thứ tao muốn nói với mày thì nhiều khi lại đéo thể nào viết thành chữ. Đã bao nhiêu lần cơn giận dữ lấy của tao cách hành xử những mối quan hệ vỡ tan như thế sanh sư. Có nghĩa, vô nghĩa, hay lại chỉ là vài câu thành ngữ thay đổi tao vào mắt vậy tao còn vô tri. Lấy của tao sự cân bằng và lấy luôn cả chút oxy, dường như là có thể lấy dao cắt cái bầu không khí như choáng ngộp cảm xúc. Tình người làm lúc cứ như bột thi làm phúc. Thôi thì mày lấy đi, lấy khi tao vẫn còn chẳng thấy gì. Lấy là không phải trả, lấy đi để còn trả cho cuộc đời này, để cuộc đời này lại trả cho vật và có mây. Có ở đây những điều mà chẳng thể nào thuộc về ai cả.
60 năm, có thể 70 năm, có thể 100 năm, cái đó cũng được. Nhưng mà vì thấy sự hữu hạn của đời cho nên mình buồn, mà buồn từ nhỏ, không phải là lớn lên buồn. Từ nhỏ đã buồn về chuyện này cái đó. Và từ đó thì sự sống chết ở đây này trở thành nỗi ám ảnh mà lớn nhất, ám ảnh lớn nhất của đời mình.
Có sao đâu, nói khẽ thôi, chill đi. Tao sắp lại té rồi, kinh nghiệm thì đéo nào mà né nổi. Làm những thứ mình phải thôi, có những lúc do khẽ thôi. Mình dễ vội chứ đéo ai biết được cái đường đời hết cái thời nghịch ngu để phường chơi. Còn cái tình cảnh mình đeo lương tới, chết tới chờ nằm đâm địch thủ đang trên đường mời. Thủ thế nên thua chỉ vì lý do gì cụ thể. Thua vì vài ước mơ nó rủ rê, thua vì cái tình hoặc dạ, thua vì mình là chính mình, thua vì thiếu toàn tính. Thứ ta có thì làm thì không hoàn chỉnh, ta đã có thì chiến thắng nhưng yêu hòa bình lại hoan bình. Sống như một thói quen như thể quan tình, ban tín và ban nghi. Vì tôi tin đời khó lường đã có nhưng lý lẽ tưởng tỏ tường và cả những ước mơ to tướng. Nhưng lý lẽ tưởng tỏ tường và cả những ước mơ to tướng. Có những cơn ác mộng đến khi tao còn đang mở mắt, khiến tao đổ mồ hôi lạnh. Và tụi mà vâng cùng mà xem câu nói ra khỏi cái bối cảnh cuối cùng thì không có đúng chẳng có sai, chỉ có điều mà nó phải như thế. Thật hớ đi, có điều thì nó chỉ là cái tự vệ. Lo sợ ai thủ thế, dễ quên cái sự thể là chủ đề. Có lẽ được miên man với những con tim bằng đá, với những cái miệng như dao và cả những đôi mắt lăm leng viên đạn mà. Nhưng giờ có những hơi âm nó đã đến từ cái tấm lòng, những đôi tai lắng nghe những cái chạm nhẹ dưới làn da và cả tiếng cười lan tỏa. Dù có đứa ai thích chỉ cho chọc gậy vào nan hoa rồi thì vơi đi mất một nửa và còn một nửa đời. Cuộc đời đôi lúc nó là những thứ mà mình còn chưa thấy. Đốt thêm một điều nữa ông ơi, tôi mạng hỏa thực ra thì cũng chẳng có gì thay đổi nhiều. Trong những ngày tháng qua vẫn lạc lõng ngồi nhìn mây, đi quả đôi lúc nó là những thứ mà mình không nhìn thấy. Và mấy cái chết năm 97, 7 năm nó là hoàn hảo để ta quay lại, không bốn đến vĩnh cửu. Để khi đó nằm lại trong linh cữu, mai đăng như mai thì tao đeo muốn dính líu. Nằm ở cái góc khuất và quá nhỏ bé để mà nhìn thấy quá to lớn để mà định nghĩa. Và có thứ thì chẳng qua là mình bịa ra cho vui, cho vơi cái nỗi buồn còn bỏ túi, cho nhẹ bớt cái gánh nặng còn vác vai bớt lao đao cái thân xác lạc loài. Trên tích cái linh hồn như con ác quái đang ta quay nhưng ra vẻ ba cái. Nên thôi có gì mình lại đốt nữa đi.
All right, so that aside, the other thing I wanted to ask is basically this is the Serenity Prayer, and it's basically just Stoic teaching. And again, we're at the end of an empire. I think a lot of people agree with that. I think you and I may disagree. No one knows what the future may hold. Everyone can kind of theorize, but we really don't know. And it's a bit unnerving, again, to see what's going to happen. And so for you, I mean, there's a reason you keep going. You keep doing what you do. So I guess, why do you do what you do? And then the second thing is for the Serenity Prayer, for listeners and for other people who feel kind of like overwhelmed when they learn all this stuff and they feel like it's Goliath and the giant kind of thing. What would you suggest are things that you can control that you think is a productive way to use your time? You know, for people who want to change this screwed up foreign policy. I mean, I hate it. I agree with you 100%. I love America, but I'm not anti-American. But right now, it's just crap. So people who kind of agree with this, who hate this, what can they do within their control? It's not futile. I know you think Trump is kind of a puppet as well. So maybe even voting is useless. So how should people spend their time? And what are things that you think are a waste? You shouldn't spend your time, stressed about it. I mean, for me, I've been trying to detox and not watch everyday politics. It's just pointless speculation. So like you said, you stop buying cassettes and stuff. So what would you suggest? Things you can control, things you can't control. And
well, I think try to have more actual experiences, rather than virtual experiences. And of course, they're going to listen to us on this podcast. But what I mean is that, I mean, we all plugged in, part of the, for how many hours a day, but try to have actual experiences, and and just pay attention, like just walk down the street, just one unfortunate thing, like the American dive bar, like the neighborhood bar is a great institution, but it's unfortunate that most of these places are becoming as loud and as obnoxious, and and you come in and there's maybe 6 televisions on, we talk about like a regular dive bar, maybe just 4 televisions on, but still there's something on, and the music is on, and these guys are not talking to each other that much, or they can't even hear each other, so so try to just have physical experiences, actual listening to people, looking at people's faces, and that's what I try to do, and in Vietnam it's still a lot easier to do that. I mean, I wander around the alleys and I see my neighbors and I just look at people, it's healing that way, and in Europe too they have that, in the piazza in Italy, people congregate, there's a passeggiata before dinner in Italy. In the small towns you see this, in the cities it's lost, but people walk around for like an hour before dinner, and they don't need entertainment, they just have each other, and so in many countries still have places that you can just mingle, okay, and so the direct experience is a necessity, it's like your birthright, and to be denied that is like is to be denied life itself, and it's a very unfortunate that Mary in certain cultures, people have very little direct contact with their fellow human beings, and like for example, Japan has a similar problem. So what I'm trying to get at is that just try to reclaim the earth for yourself, the direct experience, and not let anything be the mediator. Not get rid of all these walls around you. I mean, that's the only advice I can give.
Right on. So, and then what makes you, I mean, why do you do what you do? Why do you fight? Why not just give up and throw everything away and, move to Zambia? And why do you write on, on these things that are important to you? A lot of people feel like giving up. So what makes you not give up?
Well, very self. I mean, every now and then I would get feel a bit of self-pity or something, like fuck this, but yeah, but that's not very that's not a way to be, but if someday if I feel like this is no longer worth it, then I'll just stop without any drama, okay. But for now, I feel like I need to clear up a few things just for myself, because when you write, you don't start out knowing exactly what you're going to say. You try to articulate your argument as you're writing. So for now, it's still interesting to me, and I feel that as I get older, I'm making more sense. That I'm becoming a better writer as far as handling the sentences, the language, and also I'm thinking better. So there's a certain satisfaction in that that I'm thinking more clearly, and I'm writing with more finesse. Okay, the slight bitterness that I sometimes feel that that I'm being sort of shut out of the scene is well, it's only very slight annoyance. Okay, I mean I don't let it get to me. So the satisfaction of doing what I do better, much more than compensate for whatever punishment that I have to suffer, because like I said, there was a time when I could just show up at a university, they would fly me in, I babble nonsense for like half an hour, get paid pretty damn well, and go home. Now that I make more sense than ever, no one wants to hear from me, which is fine. But I think I'm writing, hopefully, that I still have readers 50 years from now. I'm not, although right now the readership is tiny. So what? I mean, even if there's no readers, I would still write because I'm thinking these things out for myself.
I love that. I think there was another interview you did. I saw. What did you write? You said, in the U.S., nearly all self-identified rebels only rebel in prescribed and heavily manipulated ways, which makes them pawns of the very people they think they're rebelling against. History will retch in disgust at the cowardly collusion of our intellectuals. So, yeah, that alone, I think, just for, I don't know, I think it's called posterity. I mean, just for the future generations. My little brother, he doesn't agree with any of this stuff, but I think, you know what, even if no one listens to this stupid podcast I'm trying to do, I think it'll be a good thing, maybe for the few people that it does connect to, and maybe for him, you know, when he starts to get red pilled and as the world gets globalizing, and who knows. So, yeah, I relate to that for sure. So another question: the main institutions that people generally have trouble with, again, on the left, on the right, but people who are woke. It's government, you know, modern culture, academia, the entertainment industry, and the international banking system. If it was up to you in two ways, one, in a practical way, what would you do, or what would you suggest people do to try to change these things? You know, just like as a lowly, just average person, what can they do to change these things? And then two, if you were like the supreme leader, if you were God, all of a sudden, you know, magic genie, what would you do to kind of fix all these institutions?
Well, you have to reject the party systems. You know, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Do not vote, but do not stay home either. I think the next time that they have a presidential election, Americans should show up to protest and say, this is not us, because it really isn't you. You know what I'm saying? Because when they voted for Obama, he was a con man. Trump is a con man. They all con men. You know, they cannot get that far. They can, you know, they have already been weeded out, you know, selected by the system to you know, the fact that they are on the ballots at all mean that they are already chosen for you. So Americans can disavow these farcical elections, you know, and these elections are fraudulent because they use machines that cannot be verified. I mean, that's the most obvious. They refuse to have any kind of tracking system. It's like a slot machine. You know, you can just yank on that thing and anything can show up, right? So I mean, it's so appropriate that, you know, that there's a casino guy as president, because you know. I mean, that whole business is hustling you, is conning you. Okay, and he's a con man. All right, so but they are con men. You know, I don't spend that much time talking about Trump or even about Obama, because you know, they just front men for this deeply corrupt, deeply evil system that is your enemy. You know, you are being ruled by criminals. Okay, this is a syndicate. Okay, these are very skilled criminals. These are mass murderers. You know, these are the best criminals in the world, you know. So that's the first step, you know, like the next election, show up in the millions to protest these elections, to show that, you know, this is not us. Do not blame us for the next bloodbath, or, you know, the next country that's been destroyed. You know, we do not support this. And, you know, I'm counting Bernie Sanders, all these guys are crooks. Okay, you don't mingle, you don't mix with these, you know, you don't hang out with these mass murderers without being a mass murderer yourself. And you realize that there are so many taboo subjects that none of these guys dare to touch. Interestingly enough, when 9/11 happened, Trump was on radio in New York City. He said, you know, there's definitely explosives, you know, because I mean, he's a builder. He knows, you know, he knows the building doesn't go down like that. So he said that right away. And then, you know, of course, when he ran for president, he conveniently never mentioned, you know, his statement. And here's a funny thing. Now, if he was not supported by the deep state, they could have dug that up and to discredit him, but they didn't bring that up either. You see what I'm saying? Because they don't want you to think about that. So Trump did not bring up his original observation, which was valid, and his supposed opponents, did not bring that up. So they sidestepped that. You see what I'm saying? So there's collusion there, you know, and there are other instances, you know. So and I predicted Trump was going to win when everybody else thought that they're going to sabotage. I say, don't worry, you know, he's posing as an outsider the way Obama was presented as an outsider, you know, and he's not going to fulfill any of his promises, just like Obama didn't. and it's going to be blamed on the opposing party. And look at his foreign policy, for example. He was supposed to be the peacemaker, just like Obama won the Nobel Prize, right? So Trump was talking about not antagonizing Russia or not messing with other countries. But look at what he's doing, So he's a neocon guy, just like they all are, So, and they all worship at the Jewish temple, So Americans have to realize that this government does not represent you, not at all. It's against you, It's working against your interests. It's using your money, your blood to destroy other people's societies, and it's also destroying your society. So the first step towards any kind of reform, let's say, is to disavow this criminal government that's been ruling over you. Okay, that's the first step, to discredit them on a massive scale. It can't be. Don't vote for a third party. That's when you vote for a third party, you only reinforce that the winning party really deserve to win, because if you vote for the Green Party, you get 0.5%. That just means that the winning party is really 100 times better than the Green Party. You know what I'm saying? So just to participate at all is to endorse the continuing criminality that is quite openly displayed by the U.S. government, by the federal government. So Americans won't go anywhere until they learn to condemn the criminals that are ruling over them and the people behind it.
Yeah. So one thing that I can hope, and that I feel like I see, maybe I'm not right, is that even if the average American isn't seeing or admitting to themselves who is in control and who is kind of pushing the buttons and who's who are actually serving, I think people are getting exhausted. There's only so many wars we can do in the Middle East. The clean break memo, I don't think we can finish it. People are exhausted, both left and right. They're just sick. They say another war, and there's a lot of ideologues who on the left say, yeah, go bomb Syria. But I think the average American, a lot of this is media bullshit trying to pit us against each other, divide and conquer. I think the average American, Antifa, whatever, even the extremes, I think most of them are saying, we're sick of it. We're sick of these endless wars. Maybe they don't know why we're doing it, but they are sick of it. And so I can only hope the same is true. If what you say is correct about Trump and all of them are puppets, I can only hope that if none of what he says happens, that at least there's going to be some unrest. Maybe it's just rage, just protests, but at least something.
But don't rage against the puppets. Don't rage against Obama or Trump. They just puppets. Rage against what's the people behind them, behind these clowns. And I just want to remind people that when we destroyed Iraq, a lot of Iraqi refugees fled to Syria. So Syria was not a generator of refugees. They accepted hundreds of thousands of Iraqi refugees. Okay, so now they flee in their own countries because after we destroyed Iraq, we went after them. And by we I mean the USA and Israel. All right. So Syria used to not just be able to maintain a fairly stable and happy society. They accepted desperate people that whose homes we destroyed, and now we are messing with Syria. So we have so much blood on our hands. And Americans should, the so-called progressives, the so-called the people who are so upset about Trump, the fascist, the Nazi, they should be upset about the continuing American foreign policy that is destroying so many Muslim countries. And why are they destroying these Muslim countries that happen to be adjacent or near Israel? It's because of Israel. Oil is only, it used to be like people are, we fighting these wars for oil, but it really is Israel. And I made, I made a mistaken emphasis too, because I used to think that oil was a more important factor, but I realized no, it's not really about oil. It's about Israel.
Yeah, it's the one common denominator. If people say it's a conspiracy, but you start to look at these things that are pretty cut and clear, and it seems very, very obvious. I don't know, but I think most people are just so conditioned, that's not even a possibility to them. They'll consider a million other different hypotheses before they question that as a possibility, which is quite a shame. But I think people, thankfully, because of the internet, people are starting to wake up. More and more average Joes are seeing this, and again, left and right. So I don't know.
Yeah.